Heavenly Father, the amount that you deal with every day from billions, literally billions and billions of people is incredible. And I'm thinking, God, did I get all the announcements done? And you cover everything. You are truly amazing and wonderful. And we're going to see that through your word as we study it. So we thank you for it. We thank you for giving it to us. We thank you for actually writing it, inspiring the men who wrote this book. And at times it may not seem inspired. We may read that and think, what? But if we read it properly, we can understand that you did write it. So as we ask for your Holy Spirit to come and be our guide, be our teacher, be the one who interprets it for us so we can apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so if you have a Bible, open it up to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 1. And you may not go to that. If you know where Psalms is, it's kind of in the middle. Then there's Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes is the next book after that. We just finished a couple weeks ago the Gospel of John, and then last week we had our second Sunday where I do a topical study. So whenever I get near the end of a book that I'm teaching, because I don't have things planned out, you're like, oh, great, you're just winging it? No, I'm just depending on God, and he always tells me where he wants me to go next. So I was praying, and I was, over the course of a few weeks, say, God, where do you want me to go? And kind of nothing came through. And then during the week of preparing for last week's message, he sent me believe it or not, I think he sent me a listing on Facebook where someone quoted a Bible verse from Ecclesiastes. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then the next day I got two more. Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. You don't see too many quotes from Ecclesiastes, kind of the common ones, but not so many as I saw. And then the next day, I opened my cell phone and scrolled over to the front page and scrolled up or down to the verse of the day, and it was from where? Ecclesiastes. So I said, okay, that's where we're going. And then I started reading it, and I went, oh, this is such a bummer, God. This is so negative. It just presents so much as... It's like Eeyore wrote this book from Winnie the Pooh or something. What's going on here? It's one of the hardest books of the Bible to understand. What it has, Ecclesiastes has a spirit of hopeless despair. There's no praise. There's no peace in it, in most of it anyway. And it seems like it promotes questionable conduct, which we'll get into. Ecclesiastes, though, is about the futility of a life lived without an eternal perspective. In Ecclesiastes, we see that Solomon, the author, he's not an atheist. He absolutely believes in God. The big question in Ecclesiastes is this. It's not whether or not there's a God, it's does God matter in our lives? In our point in history, we see atheistic ideas all the time. I mean, it's not a new thing, of course, but it seems like it's ramping up. And we can see the same question that Solomon presented. Does God matter? So I call this message Ecclesiastes, Meaning in the Meaningless. Now, Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon, who was King David's son. I think it's a miracle that he rose to be this king because he was the son. Do you know who his mother is? Bathsheba. Yeah, the one that David sinned to have as his wife and actually had her husband murdered to cover his sin in her pregnancy that happened because of their relationship. And that baby was born and eventually died, but the next one they had was Solomon. So what it really does is it proves another point. Before we even get into the book, we can see the grace and the beauty of God because he takes something sinful in our lives and can make it into something beautiful. Now, I remember telling my grandmother-in-law, my wife's grandmother on her mom's side, we were talking one day about our kids and my kids and my family, and I said, see, because, well, for the whole story to work, I got to tell you this. We were pregnant before we got married. But anyway, so I told her, I said, you see, God wanted us to sin so our family could turn out so well. And she says, oh, honey, no. Honey, no. God never wants us to sin. but he can take our sin and make something beautiful out of it. And that's absolutely true. So that's what's happening here. When Solomon, though, when he became king, the Lord said to him in a dream in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, he says, "What shall I give you?" Now, Solomon could have jumped at the chance the Lord gave him. He could have asked for anything. But he didn't ask for just anything. He asked for the perfect thing. In 1 Kings 3, verse 9, Solomon told the Lord, among other things, he said, "Give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" So he asked to be smart. He realized, man, my dad did great. King David did. Yes, he sinned, but he also did very well. And whenever you ever notice when God talks about David later, all he talks about are the victories, all he talks about are the good things? Because it's like God says, okay, sin's over here, but this is what I wanted. This is what you were, a man after my own heart. So he asked for wisdom. It's a great request. And because of this, God gave him more than just that. In 1 Kings 3, verse 13, continuing on in that same conversation and that same dream, God said, "I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall be no one, or shall not be anyone like you among the kings all your days." So he says, look, you could have asked for riches. You could have asked for honor. You could have asked for fame. You didn't. You asked for wisdom. So I'm going to give you wisdom and riches and honor and fame. You're going to get it all. It's going to be a total package. And then the first recorded use of that wisdom is by Solomon. It's probably one of the most famous things. It's in the very next chapter. There were two women who lived in the same house, and they both gave birth about 3 days apart. And one woman rolled over on top of her baby in the night and suffocated it, and it died. When she woke up, she realized that, so she took her baby over and put it near the woman who's still asleep, took her baby and put it by her. She swapped kids. Now, I don't know about you, but moms, don't you know your own baby? Of course you do. So there was a discrepancy. There was a disagreement. That's my baby. Nope, yours died. No, yours died, and you switched them, and back and forth. And so basically they appealed to the Supreme Court of the day. They took it all the way up to Solomon. Now, he listened to each of their testimonies, and there was one child and two mothers. So he said, hey, bring me a sword. So he ordered that the child be cut in two so they could each have half of it. And the mother said, no, give the child to her so he can live. The other one said, hey, that's cool. Now, if we can't, one of us can't have it, it might as well be that neither one of us does. Solomon then gave the child to the first one who spoke up, his mother. It's pretty smart. I mean, what a way to settle that, right? Saying, let's just take him out. Okay, cool. No, let her have him. That's the mom. The mom cares for the child. Now, before the children of Israel entered the promised land, the Lord gave them a look into the future, because they didn't ask for a king until quite a ways after they were in the promised land. But this is before they're still wandering around in the desert time. In Deuteronomy 17, verses 14 through 17, God says, when you come into the land which the Lord your God has given you, and possess it, and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me, you shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses, one from among your brethren, you shall set as king over you. You shall not set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not go that way again. So no horses. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away. Nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. Now we know Solomon was very wise. He asked God for wisdom, and God gave it to him. So obviously he obeyed the Lord in all these ways, right? After all, later in Deuteronomy 17, we're told that the king shall have a copy of this scripture, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he would both obey it and not get haughty, not get too big for his britches. Now, we have a slide of the actual board on loan to us from Family Feud. This is going to tie in, you'll see. Believe it or not, there are 6 answers up there. The top 6 answers were on the board after 100 people in the audience were surveyed. Let's see how Solomon did. Now, as far as the horses go, in 1 Kings 4, verse 26, Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. But you're not supposed to multiply horses. So did Solomon obey the Lord not to multiply horses? Well, survey says, guess not. First strike. For as far as wives go, 1 Kings 11, verse 1 through 3. But King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord had said, the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will, it's not because of racism, he says, surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Solomon clung to these in love, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. And his wives turned away his heart. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. 700 wives, guys. That sounds like a lot. Someone said it's not very wise. I think he's right. Not a judgment on women, but 700? Wow. And then 300 women just for physical pleasure. So, did Solomon obey the Lord not to multiply wives? Survey says 2 strikes. Silver and gold. 1 Kings 10:21. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. None was silver, for this was accounted as nothing in the days of Solomon. He had so much gold, so many riches, that silver was basically worthless. So did Solomon obey the Lord not to multiply silver and gold? Survey says 3 strikes. It's a good thing he's not playing baseball, because he'd be out. God is gracious, though. In fact, God has a lot of patience. You see, Solomon started out so well, but as he grew older, he began to compromise God's standards, and it took its toll on him. But he comes around in the end, so don't get totally hopeless, as we'll see in this book. Ecclesiastes is written from the perspective of life here without Jesus, without God, without having any relationship really with God. Michael A. Eaton says, what then is the purpose of Ecclesiastes? It is an essay in apologetics. It defends the life of faith in a generous God by pointing to the grimness of the alternative. So most of the book is pointing out the fact that all this is a waste, as we see, without God. So you ready to get started after all that silliness and explanation? I hope you are. Verse 1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Here we see this book is written by Solomon, and it says, well, it doesn't say Solomon, but he is the king, and he was king in Jerusalem, and his son after him, when he reigned, didn't reign from Jerusalem because the kingdom got divided. So it basically has to be Solomon. He was the son of David, king in Jerusalem, and we'll see even more proof of this later in the book. Now, the preacher, interesting, you wouldn't think of a king as a preacher, but preacher means someone who might gather, lead, or speak to a group of people, a congregation. Now, the sad part is in this book, this preacher only addressed God indirectly, and he barely even spoke about his beloved nation of Israel. Now, life on earth can be fun and good. There are a lot of beautiful places to go. I mean, think of this. Like here in Idaho, the Sawtooth Mountains, I love that. The lakes up in the high mountain areas. Even I found beauty in the desert when I lived in California when I was a lot younger. We used to go to Yosemite and see that valley. It just, you come out of that tunnel and there's that valley view, and you've got El Cap and you've got Half Dome, and you can see I think it's Yosemite Falls. But anyway, the point is, some stuff is just gorgeous. The beach, I loved going to the beach, even with the danger of sharks, and how few people actually swam in the water after that movie came out for a while. But anyway, so pretty funny. But most of the time, life on earth can be monotonous, even boring. You ever notice that if you're watching an exciting movie and they talk about, oh, we got to get over to that place. It's an hour and a half drive. You see them get in the car, and then the next second they're getting out of the car at the place. They don't show you watching them for an hour and a half driving to that place, and the person, sometimes they're 20 minutes of the guy's looking out the window in the passenger seat just not saying anything. I mean, that's life. That's the reality. It would be a very boring movie, wouldn't it, if you watched it for the, like, man, skip a bit, let's get going. So do you ever want to skip a bit in your life? You can't. And when we're bored, we can get into trouble. Because as Mary Engelbright said, life is just so daily. Every day it comes around, and he gets right into it in verse 2. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now, when I hear the word vanity, I think of two things. One, I think of the cabinet that a sink in a bathroom goes on, because I was a plumber for 25 years, and so you got why don't you install the sink? You have the vanity? Yeah, okay, so you go there and do that. So I think of that, or I think of someone who's, they're walking every time they see a mirror. Like Fonzie, goes to comb his hair. It's a old TV show. I can't believe I'm saying that's old. Happy Days, exactly, yeah. But anyway, when I hear the vanity, I think of someone who is vain, someone who's conceited, someone who is sold on themselves. But that's not the word that's used here. Vanity means emptiness, futility, vapor, that which vanishes quickly and leaves nothing behind. That's what vanity is here. The term vanity is used in one way or another 35 times in the 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes. And vanity is like a soap bubble. You ever make soap bubbles? I remember the time I found out you can mix a certain formula, amount of water and the temperature of the water to soap, and you can put your hand in there and you can actually get a bubble in this hole, and you can go, and you start going like this, and you can get, if you have it thick enough, you can get bubbles this big, and then you go, close it off, and it's closed, and it just is going like this, wiggling around. It's really fun. I did that one time when we were washing our car, and our kids were like amazed. Like, wow, Dad's so smart. I'm like, not really. But anyway, so I can make a soap bubble, but how long do they last? It's there, and in an instant, it's gone. There's no substance. This is how Solomon viewed the world and everything in it at this point in his life. Because without a relationship with Jesus, that's exactly how life is. It's empty. There's a Southern Baptist preacher, and I wish I knew his name, years ago. He said, every heart has a God-shaped hole, or what he called the Jesus hole. And you can try to fill it with furnishings, a house, a job, many women, many men, whatever your preference is, and the best job, the top floor CEO. And whenever you get there, you realize it's nothing. It's empty. I thought this is what I had to get. This is what the world shows you. You scratch and claw and work and get there. I remember hearing a quote from Jim Carrey, of all people, the actor, and he said, I wish everyone in the world could get all the money they ever want so they could realize it's not it. That's not the point. Okay? Now, his point would be something different, probably loving your family, which is a good thing. I won't disagree with that. There aren't too many people on their deathbed who say, I wish that I could have worked longer. I wish I had more money. They might wish they had more money to leave for their kids. That would be a reasonable thing. But in general, they don't say, I wish I did more, worked harder. No, I wish I had more time to be with my family. I wish I had said I love you to more people. I wish I had hugged them or whatever. Those are the things that people usually lament over. But if you have Jesus in your life, really you have everything. Because even if all that stuff is taken away, no one can take away Jesus from you. That's why the Bible says, what can man do to me? Well, man can do a lot, but they can't take your Savior away from you if you're saved. So verse 3, what profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? Now, under the sun, in this exact phrasing, another thing, appears 29 times in the entire Bible, under the sun. Every one of them is in Ecclesiastes. Interesting. What does that mean? It's the idea that in this world that we can see, the material world, under the sun, It indicates life on earth from a human perspective. Warren Wiersbe said, the Jewish writer Shalom Aleichem once described life as a blister on top of a tumor and a boil on top of that. It's like, man, you can almost, Warren Wiersbe closes, he says, you can almost feel that definition. And he says, that's what life is. Rob Evans, I don't know if you know who that guy is by name, but some of you may know the Donut Man. Did kid songs for Sunday school. And he sang a song about the donut. He says, life without Jesus is like a donut. There's a hole in the middle of your heart. And you see, that empty heart is a bottomless pit. You keep feeding it. You keep feeding it. It's got to be a better job. It's got to be that car that I saw go by. I'm going to get one of those. And you're driving the car and you're like, no, it's not. And I remember when I first got our Jeep that we have that's like 12 years old now, I guess, 2004, oh man, wait a minute, it's a lot older. It's a 2004. So it's pretty old now. But when I first got it, I was driving around as like a couple of years old, and people would go, ooh, nice Jeep. I'm like, yeah. And then I'd say, God, please don't let me think that I've got the car, because it'll get taken away very quickly. I want to worship you, not the Jeep. But eventually stuff wears out. Have you ever thought of this? You ever seen junkyards? Tons of cars in them, right? Do you know that every one of those was brand new at one time? There they are, rotting away, rusting. It's amazing. But if you put Jesus in your heart, he fills you to the top right away. And then he increases your capacity for him, and so the level goes down so you can put more of him in, more of him in. It's a lifelong pursuit to get more of Jesus. And when you put more of Jesus in your heart, there isn't room for the other stuff. So it's kind of like if you have a jar that's full and you put your hand in the jar, what happens? It's going to overflow, right? And if that jar is gross and yucky and oily and who knows what, and you stick it under a faucet and turn it on, it's pouring pure water in, or as pure as tap water is, and it's going in, and it starts overflowing. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at all that junk, and it's stirring it up. But eventually, doesn't some of the water coming out get cleaner? That's why Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You need to know that you got to put Jesus in and more of him in, so when you do talk, when you do come out with something, when you do live your life by a certain principle, it's his principles, it's his words, not your own. It doesn't mean if you're at work, you have to give a biblical answer to a question about a work problem, because, come on, I mean, be sensible. But you can do it in a godly way. Okay, from a human perspective, without God, as he says, there's no profit even in work. We can have things. We can maybe have a lot of things. Just as my friend says, don't make sure that your things don't have you. You can have them, but they shouldn't have you. Because Jesus said in Mark 8:36, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Because for a while you've got it all. But then when you die, it all stays behind. Someone said, I think it was when Nelson Rockefeller died, the richest man in the world at that time, someone asked his accountant, so how much money did he leave behind? He said, all of it. He left it all there because you don't get to take anything with you. Now, without Jesus, even gaining everything the world has to offer is what? It's vain. It's vanity. So verse 4, one generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. Now, from the human perspective, the earth has always been here. I mean, it's been here since before I was born, and as far as I know, it'll still be here after I go away, whenever that is. People come, people go. A quick visit to a maternity ward and then a cemetery will prove that point. Always babies being born, always people dying. In fact, one time when our youngest daughter, who's now 40, but she was very young, we're driving along in the car and it was really quiet. We drove by a cemetery because there's a cemetery by the road where we were driving. We didn't drive by there to make a point. We're driving and all of a sudden we hear from the back seat, wow, tons of people are dead. Proving Solomon's point. People come and people go. Where's the meaning in life? Psalm 144 verse 4 says, man is like a breath. His days are like a passing shadow. James 4 verse 14, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. I know it might be hard to think of it at this time of the year, but let's just in your mind go ahead to January or February when it's pretty cold out, and you go outside and you exhale. Can you see your breath? You see that vapor? And then what happens? Does it stay there and float around for like 10 minutes? No, it goes and it disappears. That's what he's talking about. It comes quickly. Now, in that vapor, our lives, that vapor, there's a lot of action going on. There's interaction. There's the cold fighting with the hot, and the molecules are going faster and faster, and then they're slowing down. There's structure. There's lack of structure. It's trying to break it down. There's good versus evil in a way, the good of the heat versus the evil of the cold. All this going on at the same time. So in our lives, all those things are happening, turmoil and peace. Peace in the middle of the vapor, but then eventually, and then it's gone. That's what our lives are like compared to God. In our struggle to gain, we will lose, but the earth will still be here. According to a worldly perspective. Now we know biblically that eventually God's going to destroy the earth, not by flood, which he did the first time, destroyed all the people, but he's going to destroy it by fire, which is why there's no flood. He promised not to have another flood because it needs to be dried out for the fire. But anyway, so verse 5, the sun also rises. This is another thing. You ever heard that phrase? Now you know where it's from. It's from the Bible. The sun also rises. It's a very commonly used phrase. Something I forgot to interject at the beginning. A lot of people will use the book of Ecclesiastes and quote it in their lives incorrectly, out of context, to prove whatever point they want to, including that there is no hope, why do you believe in God, blah, blah, blah. You see, you can read something from the Bible, take it out of context, and develop a whole story about God, and you can't do that. You have to read the whole thing, which is why we encourage you to read it. It's an important thing to do in your life. But the sun also rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. Now, this is not a very scientific method of describing it. It sounds like Solomon saw the sun come up and go down, and then it grew legs, went ran around to the other side and came up and down. Now we know what? The earth is rotating as it's orbiting the sun. That's why, because of the tilt of the earth, we get the seasons and all that. And actually, it shouldn't be sunrise as much as it technically, I guess it could be earth rotation to the point where the sun is appearing again. Yeah, that's sunrise is easier. You don't have to worry. You don't have to change it. It's okay. You can call it that. We all know what you're talking about. But it's really pretty smart. It's pretty accurate from our perspective. He sees the sun come up, it goes down, and it went down there, but it's tomorrow. Hey, it came up over there again. So it has to get there somehow. So it's the best way he could describe it. Without knowledge of the heavens and the universe, it appears that the sun rises, goes down, and hurries back to the other side to come up again. And no matter how long we want a certain day to last, you ever had days that, man, I wish it could never end. You're having a great time on a vacation, and you realize it's another hour, and say you're at Disneyland, if you're having fun, it's going to close. Oh. And you have to go back tomorrow. Your vacation, wherever it's camping, whatever you're doing in another country, you're like, we got 10 days there. On that 10th day, you're like, got to get in the plane and fly home. Or maybe you have a day that you really want to have end and it seems to take forever. What did Einstein say? He explained the theory of relativity. He said, sit on a park bench with a pretty woman for 10 minutes and it seems like an hour. Sit on a hot stove for an hour, and it's, wait a minute, I got it backwards. See, I didn't write it down. I should have. Said, sit on the park bench with a pretty girl for 10 minutes, for an hour, and it seems like 10 minutes. Sit on the stove for 10 minutes, and it seems like an hour. There it is. You get the point. Going on. Verse 6, the wind also goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. So especially with the passing of the seasons, the winds go about their cycles. We know that here in Idaho, generally the storms come from, the wind blows from the west, normally. In fact, I know that here because the building here, the hinges are on the east side, and I thought, what a dumb thing to do, because every time I open the door, if it's windy, it wants to blow the wind, and sometimes you got to push the door to get it to the point where it'll close. But then you get the odd times where it'll come from the north or the south, whatever, or even the east. But in general, that's what it comes from. And he says he realizes the wind blows and then it comes back and it'll blow and it keeps doing that. We don't exactly know where it goes. He's pretty smart. He figured that out. But really, the wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. It blows around continually. Same old, same old. Same thing keeps happening. Verse 7, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. It's fascinating. We had when we had our house here in Kuna, we had a fountain out front. It was a half a whiskey barrel and it had a plastic liner. Then we found an old pump, the old pump things, and I put a pump inside, electric pump, inside the plastic liner, ran the cords through, and then ran a tube from it up through the middle of the pump and down. So you turn it on and it's going water, and it looks like it's filling it up. So our granddaughter, ever vigilant and noticing everything, she's walking up and it's this far from the top. She says, Grandpa, you better turn that off, it's going to overflow. And she didn't understand that it's a constant cycle. It's kind of like what happens with the rivers. They flow in, but they never, on occasion it can, but they don't run out of water. Yet the oceans don't overfill. Unless there's global warming and we're all going to drown 20 years ago. But anyway, so what Solomon is describing is evaporation and rain. Many other writers of his time did not get this right. He noticed the sea is constantly being filled, but it doesn't overflow. Never fills higher than it is, not much anyway. Which means he figured out that the water somehow had to get into the clouds, they would blow over and rain on the ground, and then it would run back down into there. That's God's wisdom right there. He figured that out, and he gave it to Solomon. But even with that, it's the same thing all the time. If a river dries up, guess what? It's flooding someplace else. They're having major flooding over in India, by the way, and we support a native pastor over there, and I saw some pictures, and the water was getting up above 3 feet, and I think now it's starting to recede, and all they do is give glory to God. It's amazing. They say things like, well, it didn't get too high, so we're praising God for that. And it's starting to recede. We're praising God for that. And it didn't hurt this and didn't hurt that, and we can all sleep up there, and we combine houses, anything they have to do. But they don't say, God, why is it doing this? At least not publicly. They're saying, God's taking care of us. But the water, it doesn't go away from the earth. It just hides somewhere, right? It doesn't you don't look on the moon and say, hey, a couple of the craters are full of water. When is it going to come back here? No, it stays here. It's just someplace else. But without God, what we see is a vicious cycle with no meaning. And then verse 8, all things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. You see, we work and we work. Everything we have, we work for. Even if someone gave things to you, they had to work for it, or someone else had to work for it. It sounds like the phrase, there are no free lunches, right? Even if somebody gives you stuff, somehow they got it to give it to you. The New Living Translation says, everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter what we do, it's so hard to do it. When I was plumbing, and I was underneath the house with another guy, we were running a gas line. And the pipe is 21 feet long that you buy from the supply house, and you can cut it and cut threads on it. But this piece was long because we had a run longer than that to do. And so I'm kind of near one end, and he's near the other, and he's trying to thread it, and you can't get it unless you get the pipe exactly lined up. Fittings are funny that way. If the 90 is turned a little bit and you try to get it in, nope. And you can turn it this way, nope. So you have to kind of have a wrench and turn it. It really can be very frustrating. And then you can get it lined up perfectly this way, but it might be out of alignment that way or that way. And it can drive you crazy. And finally he put the pipe down on his chest and he said, why is there always something that fights us on a job? I said, Bill, that's why they call it going to work. It's not going to play. It's going to be hard sometimes. But then when you accomplish it, yay, look what we did. And they're like, well, you screwed a pipe together, big deal. Yeah, you weren't there. But you have to, and it's hard work. And sometimes it's hard to keep on doing it because it's so daily, right? I remember when even in pastoral work, so to speak, there was a friend of mine who died, and I was at the hospital, and I had to actually go to the chapel in, it was St. Al's, and I went to the chapel, and I had to settle with God. I had to tell God, okay, what's going on here? Because we all prayed he would survive. We had scriptures, we had this, we had that. You missed a great opportunity here. God, what are you doing? And he looked at me. Well, I'm sure he did look at me. I didn't see him look at me, but I had his attention. And he's like, did he not get better? Is he not home? Well, yeah. And someone saw a vision of him with his baby. Yeah, well, you know that they lost a baby, and now he's with that baby in heaven with me. Wow, God. So I had to settle it, and I came to the conclusion, he's God and I'm not. What he does and what he says goes. But the point I'm trying to make is I got outside on the curb, was talking to my friend, and I said, well, now that's over. And an ambulance pulled in, and we both watched the people rush out and take someone, and we said, no, it's not over. We may not know that guy, but it's never over. While we're here, it's not over. It keeps happening. If you go on vacation and no one else can do your job, what happens when you get back? If you're in an office, there's a stack of papers you get to go through, or a stack of emails, or both, or a stack of a lot of voicemails, and it's like, oh man, why did I go away? Because I needed to get away from this. Okay, so calm down. Okay, I can do this. But it just keeps happening, right? Right. Thank you. I know it does for me, so even if it's ministering to me right now. Now, in this, he mentions two things. The eye is not satisfied with hearing, nor the ear filled, or the eye is not satisfied with hearing. I don't hear too often with my eyes. Wow. Yeah. What'd you say? Oh, look over there. Yeah. But our sight is never satisfied. Have you ever noticed that? Because we keep on looking around. We keep on looking for the newest thing. This is especially true today. Every beautiful sunset, I have to look at it. If I hear there's a sunset, I go outside and look at it. I never look to the east. Once in a while I do, because sometimes the clouds would be colored even way over there. Then you know, oh my goodness, if I look to the east and I see a pretty cloud, the west is going to be amazing, okay? I take a picture of it. I post it on Facebook. Over and over. It's another sunset, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I have so many pictures of my chocolate lab Boo. She's so cute. All these different poses. She'll be laying by my side, and she'll put her head all the way back and upside down, and her jaws are going like this, and her ears are pointed up. She's looking at me like, got anything to eat? You know? In our day of TV, how many people watch a lot of TV? Man, that thing can be on a lot. We love news shows. Oh, there's a new show, and it's got that guy in it, and that woman. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. People want to watch it. Entertainment on television. Sports. I think sports, you know what helped me deal with my favorite teams losing, which most of them did most of the time? It's like, why do you follow that team? Well, it'll be worth it someday. And actually, all the teams I like have won championships, which makes me feel good. But I digress. Sports are just entertainment. Once you realize that, you don't have to get so mad when they don't win. But it is entertainment. We take it in. It's funny because when the next season rolls around, if you're a sports fan, you might want to watch again. And yet they're still going to have, in football, they'll have 11 guys on one side, 11 guys on the other, and the guy goes under the center or he steps back and they snap. The same things happen. You just want to see if this guy can do it better than the other guy. And it's really all entertainment. And it isn't earth-shattering. It's a way of escaping. We love our news shows. In fact, we can even watch the same shows over and over. And the way streaming is today with television, you can watch shows that you thought were lost. Oh, look at this. What is it, TV Land? I don't think there's anything new on that channel except for maybe commercials. But the shows are old. In fact, they aren't even widescreen. They have their, not letterbox this way, but this way. You know, they're the 4:3, I guess it is. But anyway. So sports are the same all the time and yet uniquely different. I believe less and less people watch the news today, but that doesn't stop them from broadcasting it. Movies are constantly being made. New ideas are especially popular, but even old ideas are watched. Many movies are remade. with new directors, new actors. We can do it better than they did. How about all the sequels? I remember when Star Wars came out back in 1977, before the turn of the century. I was sitting in the theater and I was just blown away. This is amazing. Didn't know that George Lucas had written the equivalent of 9 movies. Did anyone expect that to go 9 times? I thought maybe 3, and then they did the 3 before, and okay, they're done now. Oh no, here come 3 more. I watched them all. I did. I bought them all because I really like those. They're fun. How about the Fast and Furious movies? I don't think I've seen one of those. Pardon me. I might like them. Maybe that's part of the reason why I've got enough things that I watch. But they have so many sequels. The last one that came out was 9, and they don't even call it Fast and Furious 9. They just call it Fast 9. And I heard a guy say, I'll be really mad if the next one they make, they don't call it Fast 10 your seatbelt. He'd miss out on a chance. And you know what I didn't even mention about? Talk about? Not particular movies, but thank you. The Princess Bride, she says, one of my all-time favorite films. I didn't even mention one of the most time-wasting inventions of our time, the smartphone. I don't know who's smart with that, the phone or us, but do you know that those things, you can go to the internet, you can get all kinds of apps, you can watch things, you can listen to things, you can download music. Do you know you can even make and receive phone calls on those things? It's incredible. You can send emails, you can send text messages, you can walk around and get your neck stuck like this. How many times if you're in a drive-thru do you notice a person doesn't pull up because they're on their phone or at a red light? Or they're driving. We can't do without it for a second. How much time can we spend on them? Well, all you got to do is look at your smartphone and it'll tell you. Screen time. Texts must be immediately responded to or you aren't cool, I guess. You got funny videos, you got funny memes, posts from old friends we've reconnected with. I think that part is pretty neat. It's not all bad, but we can't seem to get enough. And there's so many more examples. I think I'd probably run that into the ground. How about our ears? I'll mention just one thread of thought. So much music is out there today. And I think one of the first things was the gramophone, right? I know they had the wire thing that was wrapped around things, but they had the gramophone, and you crank it up, and you put the record on there, and it would sound so tinny, and so, it's like, what? But they were like amazed. It was, wow, this is so awesome. And then what happened? The radio eventually happened, and that changed society. When my parents were kids, they'd listen to the radio. In fact, when I was really young, I'm sure that's most of the entertainment we had was through the radio. And then they had the record player. You could have a gramophone, but it's improved at home. And you could have a portable record player. You could take it places. But you could have a stereo that was like 90 components, and it was this tall and this wide. And you had to have the speakers that were bigger than your sofa, to get the real bass sound. And then they went to reel-to-reel tape recorders, and everyone said, that's the best, the reel-to-reel, even though they go in the background. That doesn't matter. It's reel-to-reel. It's cool. And then they condensed that and put it in a never-ending loop called an 8-track tape. If you don't know what that is, 8 tracks, because there were 8 tracks on there for 4 tracks you'd choose from, stereo being 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and twice would be 8. Math, not even once. But anyway, so then we went to cassette tapes, which is a reel-to-reel tape recorder in a little box, little plastic thing, as long as it didn't pull out. You ever take a cassette tape out and you go, the rest of it's in there, and if I go any farther, that's when you learn to carefully take it out and put a pencil eraser in there and wind it. You guys with CDs, you don't know the struggle. It was real. And then CDs came out, and people loved those, and I did too, because then you could also not only get the new music, but you could buy old music on CDs, because it sounded the same, and although they could get scratched, you didn't get the from a record. And if you have ever listened to an LP or 45, you know what I'm talking about. And you come around and have that, kind of. And people say, I love that sound. I say, well, good for you. Anyway, And then, of course, what did CDs lead to? MP3s, digital music, which is what's on our phones. You don't put a CD into your cell phone. No, you don't. And then all that music can be handheld in your smartphone. And I have a riding lawnmower that I mow my lawn with, put in the earphones how are they connected? Bluetooth, wireless, don't have to worry about the wires getting caught on anything. But I have to stick the phone in my front pocket. If I put it in the back pocket, my body blocks it. I'm like, what? I could be in another room and it still works in my house, but my body will block the signal. Okay, fine. So I put it in the front and I listen to it. It's incredible. Do you know they even make Bluetooth speakers you can put in your shower so you don't miss anything while you're taking a shower? Our ears never hear enough. And we love to hear the latest things going on around us. Sometimes it's called gossip. And the Bible talks about people who don't like teaching at one church. They want to go to another one because they have itching ears. It never stops. Our eyes and ears are insatiable. And then verse 9. That which has been is what will be. And that which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. So Solomon actually reached a pretty smart conclusion here. The past will be repeated by individuals as well as by the masses. Why? Because we are the same as those before us and those after us. They think, really? We're so much smarter today? I challenge you. Find a math book from the kids in the 40s and see if you could do that math now. They did so much more advanced stuff in school than we do now. Same thing with a lot of other subjects. And we think we're smarter because we can Google it. And I'll tell you, I Google stuff too. I mean, it's a great resource. Remember, all those encyclopedias are now condensed to your smartphone. Now, I prefer to do stuff at least on the Stone Age thing of a computer with a keyboard, because I just don't like typing, because I type with one finger and I go, at least here I can do 2 or 3 fingers. It's faster. And then he says there is nothing new under the sun. I think we can all see this, right? There's nothing new under the sun, but I'd like to put another spin on it. When we look under the sun, we will never be satisfied, because everything on earth, though it is real, it lacks substance, the real substance. But if we live our lives under the sun, S-O-N, with a capital S, Jesus Christ, we will always be satisfied. And the biblical meaning of satisfied isn't like ours. You know, I heard a guy say, when I was plumbing, he says, you heard people say you want customer satisfaction. Well, we do. But we want more than that. Because a customer can be satisfied and never call you back. Yes, he fixed the faucet. It works great. But he didn't clean up after himself. So I'll never call that guy out again. He tracked dirt in. He didn't put anything down on the floor to protect my floor. So yes, the faucet works. He knows what he's doing. You know, see what I'm saying? So satisfaction can also be dissatisfaction. What you want is customer loyalty. The kind of person that will call you every time they have a plumbing problem. There's no other number in the book to call. That's what he said. But we might put up with being satisfied here, but to be satisfied with the things of God, that means we're filled to the top and we're overflowing all over with them, because God never lets us down. To be satisfied biblically means, like, if you want to drink a water, he gives you all the water you want until you basically can't drink another drop. You know, if you have one bottle to share with a couple of people and you're out working in the sun and you take a drink, that feels good. But you want another one, but you know you kind of can't, because the other guy, you know, if you drink it all, he'll get mad, and reasonably so. But if you want to drink, there's always cool, refreshing water from the Lord. He will always refresh you and fill you to the top and overflowing. Now, as for the world, verse 10, is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. We have a saying for this today, same stuff, different day. And I edited it, but it's true. Think of how many things in life that are predictable. Does the sun rise in the west? No. Does rain go up? Rain drops? No. Do people live forever here on earth? No. What we see here on earth has always been and always will be. The sun rises in the east. Rain comes down. people die until God intervenes. And then verse 11, there is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. So we don't remember things that happened before, and in the future, they won't remember us, is what he's saying. We may remember recent history, but most of what happens on earth is quickly forgotten. Think about this. How many billions of people have lived on earth in all of history, and how few of them we actually know about compared to how many people there are. Even today, there are many famous people, but compared to the numbers of the masses, the ratio is very small. Athletes in football might say, if you win the Super Bowl, you're immortal. Except, how many of us, off the top of our head, without Googling it, might remember who won the Super Bowl even 10 years ago? Unless you're a fan of the New York Giants, you wouldn't remember. And even then, you might not remember. The future is no different. Unless your future is promised by Jesus Christ. Then you can have life and have it more abundantly, and it starts here. Then you will have that life. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for this book. I thank you for the negative look at things, believe it or not, because we can see the positive. We can look at this from your perspective, from under the Son of God. So we thank you for saving us out of this mess. Although we're still here, we are now in the world, but we're no longer of it. And we're so grateful for what you've done. So as we look to this book, Lord, and continue, I pray for your Holy Spirit to be our real teacher and guide. In Jesus' name, amen.